everybody. It's so great to get together again. It's been a little while. We had a few weeks where we had Yontif, and I hope that everybody had a beautiful Yontif. I really do. Pesach is a spiritual, physical, emotional reset. I find is that because of the intensity of our involvement for the few weeks or months, however you do Pesach, because of our intensity of involvement before Yontif comes. Almost everything gets pushed to the side. And so after Pesach, we're like, okay, where was I? Picking up all the pieces and where, what am I working on? Great to be with you as well. Thank you for saying that. Great to see you. Great to have you be here together with me. Thank you. And so let's start with jumping into the Parsha, the Ezra Hashem Yisbarach. So Rav Asher, Zechet Tzadik Livrocha, he says that usually this Parsha is read around Pesach time, right around after the Yom Tovim. So why is that? What's the connection between Lashon Hara and Yetzias Mitzrayim? He says, very much so. They're very connected. When Moshe Rabbeinu wondered and asked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what was it? What was the heavy Avera for which Klal Yisrael descended into such suffering in Mitzrayim? And Kadosh Baruch Hu told him that it was about the Avera of Lashon Hara. It was shmiras Halashon. It was speaking badly about their fellow man with no real benefit. Okay, not just for when a person speaks for the pleasure of it, just to put another person down. There's no benefit from that. They may feel a benefit, but that's not the benefit that is required by halacha, as we're going to be talking about shortly. And Moshe Rabbeinu groaned and he said, "Achein noida hadavar." Now I understand why. When he understood what happened was, he witnessed an Egyptian god hitting a Jew, and upon witnessing that cruelty, he looked around and he saw that there was no one who would be able to see what was going on, but he also saw that there was going to be no fitting descendant from this Egyptian before he killed him. He looked into the future and he killed the Egyptian. But word got out, and it was a Jew that had tattled on Moshe Rabbeinu. And so the words Achei Noida Hadavar mean it has become known that he killed the Egyptian. But also, now I understand why this galus, why this terrible suffering came upon Klal Yisrael, because they're prepared to tattle in such a way on a Jew who was actually just protecting. All Moshe Rabbeinu was doing was protecting Klal Yisrael. But there are those who are willing to throw under the bus those who try to protect Chaya. And that's what we're actually going to be talking about today. And so Moshe Rabbeinu understood the power of this Avera, that because of it, they descended into the suffering of Galus Mitzrayim. And it's even more than this about the Avera of Lashon Hara. Moshe Rabbeinu himself fell into this when he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'hein lo yaminu li. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, go and tell the people that they're going to be redeemed. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, they won't believe me. And that was Lashon Hara about Klal Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu was punished with saras because of those words that he said about Klal Yisrael. Yirmiyahu Navi was told to go and give his nevuah to the people of Klal Yisrael. And Yirmiyahu said, he was mostly saying about himself, but he said, how could I go and share my prophecy when I am a person of impure speech and I dwell among a people of impure speech? He was punished and was turned into a tree for a short amount of time because he spoke Lashon Hara about Klal Yisrael. He could speak about himself that way, but he had no permission to speak about Klal Yisrael that way. So we have to be really careful about speaking about Klal Yisrael. So the Rasha says, when we come to this parsha, Tazria Metzora, and we understand the Aveira over here, and we're taught about when a person speaks Lashon Hara, how they actually have Nagoyim come upon them, and they get a chance to change their ways. But if they don't do teshuvah, and they persist in talking badly about Klal Yisrael, using their mouth to speak evil of another person, of the whole nation, or of a section of Klal Yisrael, right? Of a shevet, meaning of, there's Baruch Hashem, there are more than 12 different collections of Yidden together in Klal Yisrael these days. We have every different kind of minhag, and Baruch Hashem, minhag Yisrael is so holy, and there's so many different kinds of minhagim, but the Halashon talk about another group within Klal Yisrael. This is terrible Lashon Hara. And so this is, as this parsha comes around, and we understand that even that if a person persisted in their Lashon Hara, they were sent out of the camp. They were not cut off from their people. Okay, they still had a chance to come back. And even if they had the nega and they had to be sent out of their camp, they were basically given a major time out from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So anybody wants to know, time out is a really good method of dealing with children. And a Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us time out. And that's what the punishment for the Metzora was. If you are going to speak Lashon Hara, if you're going to be together with people and use your capacity for interaction with people to speak badly about people, then you're going to be separated. You're going to have time out from being able to socialize with people until you know how to do it properly. We can definitely utilize time out in our parenting and in our relationships with other people. In fact, there's a very fascinating idea of giving mommy time for time out, meaning if you're not actually behaving in a way that supports my being with you right now, I'm going to take myself out. I'm going to give myself a timeout until you can behave in such a way that allows me to spend time with you. So timeout is a really good intervention. It's a lot. It's not a punishment, but it's a consequence. You're not using your mouth properly. You can't be together with other people. You want to learn how to use your mouth. You can be able to come back into the society of Klal Yisrael. So this is really important, okay? And so we need to understand how we could speak. When the Sefer Shmiras Halashon came out, the Chafetz Chaim made a revolution. And one of the comments that I read about it was that Baruch Hashem, the Chafetz Chaim now gave us permission to speak, because honestly, until he wrote his Sefer, we don't know what we could speak. We don't know what we could say. Maybe everything is Lashon Hara. But now that the Chafetz Chaim wrote it all down and gave us the guidelines, now we know what we can speak. Baruch Hashem. And it's known that the Chafetz Chaim himself was a very chatty person. He wasn't a silent individual at all. He spoke a lot, mostly about cows and produce and, interesting the different things that animals needed. He had a lot to say, but never Lashon Hara, and mostly not about people at all. So you can be very, very chatty and sociable without speaking about Lashon Hara, without speaking badly about other people. Now, as we know, there are the Lashon Hara l'to'eles, Lashon Hara for a purpose, is something that is a mitzvah. Now, we might ask ourselves, why is it a mitzvah? It's a mitzvah to say something bad? How could it be a mitzvah to say something bad? So we have to understand is there's a reason why it's a mitzvah to say something bad. And it's not just that you now have permission to speak. It's we have to understand there is power in our speech, and that's what these ideas that Rabosha said are. We have to integrate them. We have to learn about them, and in one of the in Tehillim Samaches, it says that forget the exact lashon of the person. One second, let me actually look it up. Yeshiv al Hasfasayim. Sorry that I actually didn't have it open and ready before I started. It was disrespectful of me to you as an audience. Okay, it's quite a long capital. Okay, the Talmid Baal Shem Tov. I don't see the pasuk here. Talmid Baal Shem Tov said that on a pasuk in this capital that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is sitting ala sfatayim. Hashem is sitting and waiting at our lips to notice what we're talking about, what we're saying, because when we say something, we actually give koyach to the pamalishon malu. We give koyach, we give power to the heavens to put into practice the things that we're saying. And if chas v'shalom a person says evil things, we give the pamalishon malu, we give the heavenly hosts the power to exact punishment through the power of what we've said. And if we say positive things, then we give the heavenly host power to bring down positive blessings down into this world. So there's tremendous power in our speech. And yet, saying Lashon Hara L'To'eles, saying something negative for a positive purpose that is reasonably likely to be heard. If it's not going to be heard at all, then it shouldn't be said. But if there's a reasonable chance that it will be heard, then we have to say it. And so there's a reason why we're allowed to say even something very negative, even something horribly negative. And that is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a protector. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a magain. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us chukim. He gave us laws that we can't really understand, such as the mitzvah of the para adum, of the red heifer. And Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us mishpatim. Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us laws through which a righteous society can engage in business, can build homes for people, and so that neighbors don't encroach on the area of each other. And these are laws that can be understood. And the goal of the mishpatim is to protect the underdog, to protect the widows and orphans, to protect the people who don't have anybody else to protect them. That's the purpose of the mishpatim, is that justice should be done, and that the impoverished, the poor people, should be able to be protected, and that we have so many laws that teach us that do not give a favorable judgment to the rich in favoring the rich over the poor people, because judgment and justice is about fairness, and Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to protect those people who are vulnerable. And so the protection of those who are vulnerable is a higher priority than guarding our speech from saying something bad about another person. And unfortunately, in recent years, we have witnessed situations where there were people who stood up and wanted to protect the innocent, wanted to protect victims, wanted to protect children who'd been abused, wanted to protect women who'd been abused, and all kinds of people who've been abused. And other people came along waving the banner of Lashon Hara. You mustn't say those things. It's Lashon Hara. And they completely ignored the fact that Lashon Hara for To'eles, Lashon Hara to protect people, is not only allowed, but it is an imperative. It's something vitally important. I want to share with you a correspondence that has been printed in Rabbi Yoshua Kaganov's Sefer, his book, which brings out many different psukim, many different uh, halachic rulings about what is to be done if a person uh, has been the victim of abuse and they want to get some help. I've had so many clients who have been ostracized by their family for having spoken out about the abuse that was done to them, and they were and the truth is that if we can protect somebody else by speaking out, that's what we need to do. So let's just read here. Rav Sternbuch, okay? This is Rav Sternbuch, who is Rav Moshe Sternbuch of the Eder Haredes of Yerushalayim. He's originally from South Africa, and he is a gadol in Torah in our generation, one of the biggest gadolim in our times, and one of the biggest gadolim in Israel. Rav Sternbuch said that present or future victims must be protected, even if it hurts the reputation of a community, family, or individuals. He also said that the centrality of this concern for the victim also means that even if institutions such as yeshivas will suffer financial damage because of the disclosure, the victim's welfare still takes precedence. The halachic imperative to save the victim simply means that the well-being of the victim is not sacrificed to protect the reputation or financial well-being of others. This clearly means that speaking Lashon Hara, telling people about something that happened, about abuse that happened, is absolutely more important than even protecting a reputation of somebody. So there may be people in a yeshiva who have carried out abuse against an individual. Protecting further victims, further potential victims from abuse is more important than protecting the reputation of those people. Furthermore, the protection, this is Rav Kaganov said, the protection of the victim is the halachic imperative. Therefore, Rav Sternbuch told me that if a person receives a psak, I'm going to say something which is going to be rather shocking, but I don't know if this is something that most people have heard, and so I'm going to go on record sharing this. Rav Sternbuch told Rav Kaganov, if a person receives a psak from a rabbi which clearly does not protect the victim, that rabbi's psak should be ignored. Rav Sternbuch told me that such a rabbi is not acting as a rabbi, and that one should find another rabbi whose advice will protect. Thus, one is not allowed to accept a psak from a Talmid Chacham and is required to ask another rabbi if the psak will not protect the children. There is no requirement to show respect to the first rabbi's psak if it means sacrificing your child. It is a well-established principle that if a rabbi errs in a Devar Mishnah, which is a clear-cut halacha, that one does not have to listen to him. Therefore, if a child is being molested and a rabbi says not to call the police, you should find another rabbi who will say to go to the police or social services. Your responsibility is not simply to report the matter, but to actually bring about protection for the victims, meaning to be involved, to follow up, to make sure that the case is being handled to the degree that the perpetrator is no longer able to harm further people. Again, the prime concern in abuse is how to protect the individual and community from harm, meaning the abuse victim. At the same time, it is important to involve and utilize rabbinic and community leaders, since they have unique and valuable resources and authority. But there is no reason in Jewish or secular law that the religious and secular authorities can't form a partnership. This has in fact been done by Rav Yehuda Silman, member of Rav Nissen Karolitz's based in Bnei Brak. I'll just tell you something that Rav Silman has said. Rav Silman has paskin that there is no distinction regarding reporting an abuser or an uncertain abuser. A suffix rodef, meaning if a person is maybe doing it or not, is treated as a certain rodef, as if he is pursuing. So a rodef is somebody who is causing danger and harm to another person. In halacha, sexual abuse is like murder. That's actually what it's like. And so a person who is abusing another person is as if they are a murderer. And so they are a rodef. Similarly, if there's a question whether someone did tshuva, or whether after a number of years it seems that he has controlled his lusts, it is better to make a choice which protects the child. And the molester is not trusted again with children. It is important to understand that the sickness of pedophilia is a lifetime condition, and therefore, even with old age, his desires are not necessarily diminished. Even those who have been imprisoned and received psychotherapy have been found to sometimes renew abusing even 20 or 30 years later. Therefore, it cannot be presumed that an abuser has learned his lesson and is now controlling his lusts. He is to be considered a danger to children unless a careful psychological, physiological evaluation verifies that his lust has disappeared. Okay, now that is, I know it could be quite shocking, but we really need to do this. Question's been asked, what if a brother abuses a sister? One has to do everything in one's power to make sure that that brother gets the help that they need, and that they are aware that if they would do anything, that the police will be contacted. They must be told that they must go for help, that they must deal with their, whether it's an addiction, whether it happened, again, I don't know whether it happened at a young age, and whether it was something that was, just a experimentation of young age, or whether it was something that is pedophilia, that is an actual kind of illness came up later, and that needs to be assessed. It needs to be assessed whether that person is still a danger to other members of the family, and so the child should, the person, the brother, should be really spoken to in hopefully by somebody who they will listen to. That they must go for an assessment. That we know that this happened. That even if it was many years ago, we want to just make sure that something like this would never happen again, and that we really are insisting that an assessment is made to make sure that they are no longer a danger to the community. Okay, yeah. One last reading here. In contemporary society, again, this is from the Psak of Rav Sternbach. In contemporary society, dealing with a molester is simply an issue of how to protect the victim. It's not a judiciary issue in which rabbis must judge the guilt or innocence of the accused and decide on punishment. This is really important that we get this. It's not about taking people to court necessarily, and it's not about making sure that that the case is brought to the public arena. It's about making sure people are safe. That's what Lashon Hara to Eles is about. It's about making sure that, in the words of the Chofetz Chaim, if a chenvani, if a store owner is charging 3 times the price, you're allowed to make sure that people in your neighborhood know that this store has inflated prices. If you can go in and tell him, look, your prices are very, very high, and I'm going to tell people that your price is so high if you don't want to put them down. And if they don't put them down, then you can let people know, if they're going to go to that store, you should know it's overpriced. The goal here is not to just simply badmouth somebody, but our goal is to protect. And this is what this Rav Stillman, there's a point that Rav Yehuda Stillman has repeatedly made. In a non-judicial framework, there is no halachic requirement of first seeking the guidance of a rabbi based on even proper witnesses. Knowledge of the facts do not have to be absolute in order to act. The knowledge can come from rumors and the testimony of women and children as well as non-Jews. Rav Sternbach told Rav Kaganov that the reason for consulting a rabbi is basically so that the world is not hefker, and the world is not lawless, and that we should tell the rabbis what's going on. However, this consideration, says Rav Sternbach, is not more important than obtaining protection. When seeking protection, there is no need to utilize only observant religious Jews. This is clearly stated in the classic Torah literature, and there is no dissenting opinion. This is not a machlokes. It is clear. If a rabbi claims that nothing can be done to protect the victim because of the prohibition against Metzora or Chilul Hashem or Lashon Hara, Rav Sternbuch told me that the rabbi who said that, their view should be ignored. Such a psak for inaction and passivity is unequivocally wrong because it is contrary to the mainstream Torah authorities throughout history. Okay, so yes, it is important that we don't speak Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is where we try to make ourselves look better or make somebody else look bad by speaking about them, by speaking about their previous bad behavior or things that they've done, or that they're not good enough at their job, all kinds of ways that a person could speak Lashon Hara that is not for benefit. If you know somebody who's who has a professional position and you think that they're not living up to what they should, you should go and speak to the people who are in charge. You don't just go bad-mouthing against him. But the purpose of Te'eles, the ultimate purpose of Te'eles, is to protect people. When it comes to shidduchim, if a person doesn't want to tell you Lashon Hara about somebody and someone ends up getting married because of it, then that person is potentially doomed in so many kinds of situations. Of course, we should ask a rabbi first, right? Of course, we should ask a rabbi. Certainly about, and there's a shmiras Halashon hotline. You can call up 24/7, not 24/7, 24/6, and you can get guidelines about how exactly you go about telling people in order to be able to, or how to go first and approach the store owner themselves in order not, you don't want to destroy a person's reputation, and at the same time, protecting people. Protecting people is so vital and important. And in so many cases, people lost perspective. In the Chaim Walder case, the terrible, terrible, horrible things that man did. I hope that everybody has thrown out all of his books and that they're not accessible to anybody. But that man was evil and wicked, and the things that he did. But at the time, so many people said, no, it must be Lashon Hara. We shouldn't say Lashon Hara about somebody who did so much good. And the devastation that he created in the lives of so many cannot be made better by the fact that he put out some very nice books. And so people who are abusive and abusers and perpetrators of horrible, horrible things. Who is he? I don't have to talk about it. He was an author who wrote many children's books and many adult books, who was very famous in the worldwide Jewish community until maybe it was 7 years ago. And he ended up being revealed as a terribly wicked perpetrator of abuse on women and children. And his books had the haskamas of the biggest gedolim of Bnei Brak, but he kept his nefarious deeds secret, and people did not know what he had done until it came out. So people didn't want to talk about it for fear of Lashon Hara. But this is what Rav Silman of Bnei Brak is now coming out and saying. There's no, we must not listen to the cries of Lashon Hara. Rav Sternbuch, Rav Moshe Sternbuch of the Charedes is saying, you must not listen. If somebody tells you it's Lashon Hara, go to another rabbi who understands that there is a victim over here, and there are more potential victims. When it comes to emotional abuse, there is unfortunately a tremendous lack of understanding of what constitutes emotional abuse, of what domestic violence actually is, and just how rampant it is in our communities. And I think that the more that women go to their rabbis and let the rabbis know what they're dealing with at home, the chances are that more rabbis will come to understand the kinds of abuse that are going on. And so we need to be willing to go and speak about what's happening, because the more women who speak out about domestic violence happening in their own homes, the more other people may be able to be helped, because the rabbis will understand more. of course, there's a tremendous fear of retribution. That the woman is scared that if she speaks to her husband, if she speaks to her husband's wrath, that there might be some retribution, that the husband will act violently towards her. And so maybe it's time to speak to a Rav who's outside of the community, to reach out to somebody who, to a woman's shelter, to reach out to someone like Lisa Tversky, who is a psychologist, who is a social worker, who is an expert in these areas, to reach out to international experts who speak out about the topic and get some kind of support. Because yes, there is a very real danger of somebody taking retribution and acting out, especially if he's been violent in the past. Then he could certainly become more violent. And so it's very necessary to be careful and to protect yourself. Okay. If the person who was the abuser has already left the world, is it worth speaking out against them? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. For what purpose? That doesn't seem like that would necessarily be helpful. But if there is a danger that this person could endanger other people and continue to be a perpetrator and continue to abuse, then yes, it is important to reach out and stop and protect people. And we need to be much more protective of the vulnerable than we are respectful and protective of the abusers and perpetrators in our community. Because unfortunately, we do tend to err on the side of protecting perpetrators, and that has to stop. And so our keeping the halachas of shmiras Halashon need to include our capacity to speak out against perpetrators and abusers. And hopefully, that's my message of the week. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for asking your questions. If there's anything else you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask now before we finish. And I'm wishing everybody a gesundte Sommer, a happy and healthy summer. If it will help the abuser, one second, let me just go back into your chat here a second and see what. Let's get 1 second. Looking at the chat here. Where's the chat? 1 second, trying to find the question that you just asked. Here we go. If it will help the abuser to release their pain, is it worth speaking out about a person who has passed? You mean the abused, not the abuser? You mean if it will help a victim release their pain?
Yeah, I meant the victim.
Yes, if it will help a victim, then it's worth reaching out to the victim, absolutely, and helping them relieve their pain. Certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it's very important because as Amudim has been spreading the awareness of this, of what happens after abuse. Amudim was formed. Amudim, the organization for therapeutic referrals. They were formed because the founder found that so many young people were committing suicide after being abused. And the suicide was mostly a result of the isolation that they experienced after the abuse, and not necessarily the abuse itself. People who have gone through sexual abuse often feel so isolated and so misunderstood and so blamed and so incapable and so silenced, that when we give the victims the chance to actually speak out, we're giving them life. Rather than re-traumatizing them and just abandoning them to isolation and terrible feelings of being abandoned by society. So I absolutely think that if you can do that in a way that is sensitive and helpful and supportive of victims, yes, it's worth reaching out to them and let them know, I know what happened and I'm here to support you. They feel like they did something wrong. Absolutely. They have been told that they were wrong. They have been manipulated to feel that they were to blame. And so, yeah, they absolutely need the support of those who can show up for them. So thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in this conversation, sharing your questions and reflections and feedback. May we all have besoros tovos and a healthy summer, and look forward to being again in this space with you so much as we enter into the summer months, and hopefully just share good news.